Hold the roll. So, give me a good loud set, Dave. Yeah. Stand by.
Okay, John, the storyboards.
Okay, camera set. Set.
And action!
Oh, it's from Carlisle, which we spell with an S. Sweet Bianca.
Good.
Good. Okay, great. And action.
When we wrap production on Breaking Dawn, we will have completed 5 movies in 3 years and 3 months.
I'm so honored to have been a part of this phenomenon.
It's kind of amazing. There's some really great people, lots of really great actors.
It's a family that is very unique.
I've made so many friends that I truly believe are gonna last a lifetime.
What your imagination leaped off the page when you were reading the book is now coming to a tangible reality when you're watching from Bill Condon's perspective.
And action!
You're going to see the wedding.
With all of the decor and the dress and the costuming.
It's magical. It's absolutely magical.
It's from the plates to the music.
I've sort of been ramping up to do that scene for like 3 years, so I was just going out of my mind.
We're here in Rio de Janeiro. Our first day of shooting, day 1 of 101 days.
Great. I'm gonna pull them out. We're moving up the hill. Everybody grab something to carry.
We went to Rio in the rainy season. We do stuff like that.
I don't know, this is a very unique situation. Day 3 of shooting.
So we're not staying in Rio?
Just passing through.
It's the first day in Canada. This is painful.
You finally get to see Jacob take the leadership role that he's always been destined to.
He has to become a man and, do the right thing.
I want them safe, and I want this over.
You're going to see the pregnancy,
I was thinking Renesmee.
the delivery.
I mean, some of it was gross. Being honest, there were moments where I couldn't keep a straight face, at least.
Stay focused.
Good.
There's a nostalgic aspect to it, I think, for all of us.
It's truly been amazing.
Yeah, I think I will miss it a bit.
Keep it clear, guys. And set.
On Breaking Dawn, we were really blessed. A lot of great directors came forward who were interested in the material and the challenge of making 2 movies at once.
We had a different director every time, so it's always kind of interesting to come back.
Starting with Catherine Hardwicke, to Chris Weitz, to David Slade, to Bill Condon.
Part of what was interesting to me is that each of those previous films is very different one to the other. And each director's had a completely different approach to those movies, So it is a chance to put your mark on it.
I'd like to introduce everybody to our fearless leader, Mr. Bill Condon, at the end. Our director.
Bill Condon, somebody that we had approached on both New Moon and Eclipse.
I'd heard about them as some of the other movies had been happening, and the timing was never right.
Lo and behold, when we went out to start looking for Breaking Dawn, he said, I'm interested.
8:30 crew call. That was what we talked, I think, today.
And that was a real excitement for all of us. He came in and he said something in his meeting with Stephanie and all of us that I always remember. He said, I guess I've imprinted on the world of Twilight. And it was like, perfect. The fact that he kind of used that metaphor for his own affection for the series.
Oh, great.
Come the camera this way. It's those big decisions you have to make about how to tell a story cinematically.
I mean, he's had a very, very different story to work with. When a lot of people could have balked at the subject matter, he kind of embraced it. And also liked the idea of embracing the horror aspects of it, which is quite bold.
Bros, no. Let the morphine spread.
There's no time, he's dying.
Cut. Okay. Cutting.
Bill has come from a world of which he's touched on a lot of variations of different genres.
He is a bit of a genre junkie. I mean, he loves fantasy. He, early in his career, wrote genre films.
I started with these really strange, goofy horror movies, Strange Behavior and Strange Invaders.
And he's a visual director. I mean, if you really think of Dreamgirls and the world of kind of stage and musical, it's a visual medium itself.
Just close up that gap a little, right? Good.
It's a joy because very rarely do you ever have a chance where a director is able to comprehend the grander scheme and not just sectionalize it. Bill does look at everything. He looks at the grand canvas and he's able to understand where all the palette is and the various colors and how you execute those elements.
The idea of that little linger you did, like holding back to the last look at him, that was excellent. I think you could do a little more of that, you know?
His talents are very obvious for why they would make sense for this movie. He has pulled performances out of people that have never acted before, and he's able to articulate the sophisticated themes of Breaking Dawn.
There are big challenges, because it's about taking something that's written as a fantasy and actually bringing the moviegoer along to the degree that they believe in it.
I mean, there's something clever about the fact that he's actually thought it to make a joke to ease the mood. You know what I mean? So it's like looking at each other and sharing that laugh, I think, is worth it.
You're dealing with a well-known book, so you have to be very sure when you're inventing something that it fits into the fabric of what's already been created. I think everyone is very, very intent on making sure that the movies don't betray what those books are, and that was very important to me, and it was to everybody on the film.
This is a huge book, and that created its own challenges.
So it was sort of mind-blowing to have the author right there, handy and able to weigh in on those things.
Working with Bill has been great. He's very open with what he's doing. I've never worked with a director who will let you see rough cuts put together.
I read the book and I was really turned on by it. So much of these other movies have been the setup for what happens here. In the course of one movie, Bella gets married, she has sex for the first time, she gets pregnant, she gives birth, she dies, and she's reborn. That's just the first movie, So the whole movie is a third act. And that was really fun. It felt very satisfying.
For the first time, I'm producing the movie as well as being the writer of the source material.
It's been a real natural progression in terms of her involvement. Each movie has been a real step forward in terms of kind of how collaboratively she's been involved in the making of the film.
She tried to fire me. How many times have you tried to fire me? After every movie, she tries to fire me. Peter's not following the rules.
Really, the producer title hasn't changed much. I was really involved, particularly with New Moon and Eclipse.
Whenever we have questions about mythology, whether she was physically there or not, we were calling her, and emailing her, and she's looking at all the footage too. So now she's just there in the moment.
It is different having to worry so much about the weather and are we going to be able to shoot tomorrow? That's a new experience.
Melissa really understands Stephanie's world. She has a great relationship with Stephanie. It's a strong, kind of unified partnership. She has done an amazing job synthesizing these books into movies, and we've never had to waver from her as a screenwriter from the very first book. She's carried us all the way through.
It was so good to have Melissa there who knew the challenges of adapting Twilight to the screen so intimately.
It's not too late to change your mind.
Why, are you having second thoughts?
I've been waiting a century to marry you, Miss Swan.
It's always a little bit dicey when a director is a writer-director. And Bill Condon, an Academy Award-winning writer, whom I had always admired, he was one of the best director collaborations I've ever had.
We would just spend all this time batting it out. She'd write, we'd talk, and we really didn't then show it to anybody until we really had a draft that we thought held together dramatically.
He knew how to get to the heart of the story.
Melissa knows this world. She knows the voices of these characters. It was great. I really loved it because it was just a very easy and good collaboration.
I think we have to leave at 3:45, right? Something like that. Yeah. 3:30, so we should leave at 2:30 then.
Most scripts are, on average, run between 100 and 120 pages, and in this particular case, Breaking Dawn 1 and 2, combined is about 250 pages.
The easiest way to tackle it is we're shooting one long movie, and we're shooting out of sequence at times.
You could be into the end of the movie in the first 3 weeks of a 20-week schedule. And a director's comfort level has to be in place in order to achieve that on every level.
We would film a scene from the beginning of the first movie in the morning. We'd have lunch and then film a scene from the end of the second movie. It's crazy.
And it becomes a complicated chess game, which has to be resolved by a director who is doing his homework as best he can based on 250 pages of script.
The nuances of it for the actors and Bill are that they each have to create their own emotional journeys for 2 separate movies.
If you're shooting part 1, you gotta completely ignore anything that you've already done in part 2 because it hasn't happened yet.
It was all about prepping my script and everything. I've got Post-it notes and sticky notes and different color markers, and I can look back and pull a tab and it says, this is what's happened, this is what happens after, and this is what's happening now. Bella, are you okay?
It was difficult, but we had Bill Condon there with us, you know, to help us along the way. We had Stephanie.
The idea that we were going to be doing this for half a year did seem a little overwhelming, but I think it was right because it is one story, you know? It is truly not 2 movies. It's a long story that's cut in half.
L'amore ci mantiene giovane. Edward and Bella are to be married.
Cut. And cut. Cut.
And set. And background.
I thought the essential thing about the wedding was to experience it as Bella would. This section of the film is not told in the same shorthand that most movies are made in these days. It takes a minute for her to get down the aisle. It's not just real time. I think you're in sort of a suspended time. I think because of the anticipation, it was possible to really settle into a different rhythm where you explore as many of those emblematic moments as possible.
Hey, what's up?
With Kristen as my collaborator, as long as we could really feel everything that she's going through as she's waiting for it, and then as she walks down that aisle and as she gets to Robert, then I thought it would be a satisfying experience.
I do. I do. The wedding, it just felt so real. And everyone was sitting in the pews. I was like, thank you for coming to my wedding. You know, it's just like, it was so cool. And I've sort of been ramping up to do that scene for like 3 years. It's a huge, elaborate sequence. There's a ton of stuff to shoot.
It's been building up and building up and building up. I think Edward's proposed to her about 50 times by now. So it'd be quite nice. At least he doesn't have to propose anymore.
We have the biggest wedding since Charles and Diana now. It's like everyone's been waiting for this thing, and that's been a fun process.
3 films have been about marry me, yes I will, when we're ready. Now the moment of truth is finally upon us.
No one.
It's an exciting day for us today. We're finally shooting the wedding.
We approached it from what will this wedding look like where it won't look like everybody else's wedding. What if it just was part of the forest?
It's kind of along the lines of Midsummer's Night Dream.
We're in the middle of the woods. It was very romantic and young and elegant.
We wanted it to be very organic, to be part of the forest.
There's no white chairs, none of that. No typical wedding.
Flowers that just seem to be floating in air. And part of it is that they had to filter the sun so that it would never hit them and they'd sparkle.
It's just branches that have come up out of the ground that are turned into benches.
This entire environment was going to just grow out of the forest. It was an enchanted moment in an enchanted place.
There's this incredible arch in white flowers. The path, it's moss with little white flowers all through it. It will be as if it's raining flowers.
We brought in tables and chairs, and then we had some wonderful tablecloths created from wildflower linens and organic branch candelabra. We had a floral designer create floral centerpieces that are ferns and moss and white flowers.
The tabletops are all sort of like moss that comes up into branches with candles, and it's pretty beautiful.
I think the scenery kind of creates this beautiful summery feeling that is kind of lots of sparkle and magic. Some in the table dressing, there's sort of sparkly things as well. You know, we tried to do something organic and yet elegant and magical.
And roll sound. Hey, only mark.
And action. Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here on this beautiful day to bear witness, to witness the union of Bella and Edward.
To have and to hold.
Is it for better or for worse?
For rich, for poor, I thought.
It is. It's for richer or for poor, right?
I now pronounce you husband and wife.
Stop clapping.
Yeah. Everyone leave, please. I don't know any of these people. It's really funny.
What about I shake his hand as this little thing goes?
When a couple of people ask me to say, you got to be in this scene, we're sharing with Stephanie Meyer, the writer, Melissa Rosenberg, the screenwriter, and Wick, the other producer. How can you say no? Forever in history.
I came up especially to be in the wedding. I wanted to be a part of it, and it's incredible to be sitting there and watching it all happen.
I did think that was a great place for everyone who'd been involved in the movies to make an appearance. So they're all in the audience, and that's fun, but it wasn't until I was putting the movie together. There was this one shot where we're sweeping past Stephanie, and she's looking into the camera, and I thought, you know, that might be a moment as Bella's getting her bearings if they just glance at each other, and it felt like it, you know, it's always tricky there because you don't want to do anything that's too meta or takes you out of it. But it also felt to me like a very moving moment of just character acknowledging her creator.
What a freaking gene pool, man. Seriously.
You've got some,
What?
And cut.
It's really exciting because when you meet the Denali clan for the first time, it's at the wedding.
That's exciting because their characters were supposed to show up earlier. I always felt like they would. Over and over again, they kind of got pushed to the next novel and pushed to the next novel. And I think we feel a little bit that way. Everyone's been ready for them.
We come in for the wedding, and, you know, we make quite an appearance. I don't think humans are so used to seeing a bunch of golden-eyed vampires sitting around the table, dressed really well.
They look fantastic for the wedding. Tanya really dressed in the nines.
Oh my God, they're the gorgeous Denali sisters in great dresses.
There's like 400 people in our town, and half of us are supermodels.
A wedding is just also a chance for everybody to look great. So that was a really fun part of this.
The Denali clan started a diet to look okay for the wedding. We shot 3 months in Louisiana and New Orleans, so we've been eating a lot of fried food. Once we got here to Squamish, we're like, okay, now we have the wedding, you know. That was our goal, just to get a little bit more healthy. So we've been like working out, I've been hiking, cross-country skiing, so it's fun.
That entire Cullen family, and they're all great-looking people. I think Michael dressed them all beautifully.
The actors that have been with these characters for such a long time, we sort of designed the dresses together, working out what would be appropriate for our people. We're dealing with very unique characters. They all have an interesting backstory.
Each one representing the spirit of when they lived, especially Alice.
Everything's packed and ready to go. My gown in particular, I've had a lot of say in, and we kind of created it from scratch.
With Alice's dress, we thought about the world that she came from, the 20s and the 30s. We looked at the dresses from those periods. We thought that Alice might be influenced by those fashions.
Alice is from the 1920s, and so I kind of thought it would be really fun to have that kind of inspire her look. So we created this kind of 1920-ish dress.
That period really suits Ashley so beautifully with her short hair and her fashion-forward kind of feisty look. We've given her dress a kind of sparkly quality, and then we added all the feathers down the hem because she is a great dancer, of course, and so we thought that would be great for the dancing sequence. For Esme's dress, we wanted to create something timeless, classic, very elegant that suited her character, so we found a beautiful beaded fabric. I dyed it into the sort of color tones that we were thinking of. We wanted to control all the colors really carefully for the wedding, so we kind of uses a lot of the Cullen purpley grey tones. Rosalie, Nikki's a lot of fun to work with. She's got lots of great ideas, so we talked a lot about evoking the glamour of the 30s with her dress. So we looked at lots of references from old Hollywood sort of stills, and we came up with something kind of romantic and dramatic that suits her personality.
It's very elegant. I would say it's not over the top, but it accentuates very specific parts of the body.
I don't understand how fashion for guys hasn't really changed in the past 100 years.
I love my tux. I love it. It makes you feel like $1 million.
We worked with Brioni, who's an amazing Italian suit maker. I did some drawings of what I thought would be great for the boys, and they followed through and made up these beautiful suits right to the design. We thought it'd be fun to have some historical references in the suits, so I looked at suits from the 30s right through to the turn of the century. We have our velvet collar details, we've got a nice peaked lapels. We've got different cuts. We've got, say, knee length and a hip length for the different characters. So it's a kind of nice mix of contemporary and vintage styles.
A lot of thought has gone into, in a sense, the reveal of Bella as a bride.
It is the big costume of the movie, and I did want to reveal it in stages until finally when she's seen Edward and walks on the aisle, you get the whole vision of it.
What I liked about the wedding dress is that they had ingredients to be revealed. That was not just a dress, that it had the back that reveals the back. It had elements that would allow us to slowly be putting pieces together.
Stephanie Meyer had lots of ideas about the wedding dress. Of course, she created it in her book. And she had always thought of Carolina Herrera as the designer of that dress.
She had very specific details that she wanted to use in this wedding gown.
Carolina Herrera is my favorite, and I really wanted the dress to be something that really special, not something that you're going to see every day, not a dress you would go and pick up at a store somewhere.
I thought an inspiration a little bit from the 20s, but it has to be for now.
Together, Stephanie and I collaborated with Carolina Herrera, and they created this beautiful white bias-cut satin dress.
The lace is especially designed for that dress, which is the extravagant detail in the back of the dress, which is a very important detail.
It's got a very dramatic back, which is kind of cut out with beautiful lace overlays. I think Stephanie wanted it to be extremely simple, not overdone.
I love what they did with it. They just came up with a really stunning concept. It's similar to what I envisioned, but then they sort of add in their own elements. It turned out beautiful.
Considering how much pressure and weight has been put on this dress, it was really scary right up until it fit perfectly.
She really loved it, I think. And so it was about something that was going to be beautiful and that would fit Kristen perfectly. And I think that's where we ultimately landed.
The most important is to please the bride because she's going to wear it. And when she tried the dress on at the end, she was very moved by it.
I think it's beautiful. I love it.
Which it was fabulous for me because I thought the job was done.
I now pronounce you husband and wife.
We started in Brazil, so the movie started with the honeymoon.
Shooting in Rio was really an experience.
Brazil was kind of chaotic, but it was the most amazing environment.
Like visually stimulating stuff. It was great.
It makes for a nice location change from cold, rainy Forks, Washington. There were tons of challenges, you know, shooting in Brazil and in a condensed time frame.
When you've only got 3 or 4 days in a certain location, and every minute and every hour is so vital.
So if it was rainy one day, we had to go inside and shoot them making breakfast. If it was sunny, we ran up to the tops of waterfalls and did all of that stuff that will make audiences feel they've had the idyllic honeymoon.
These are books that have become very important to millions of people, and every one of those people fantasizes about what that perfect honeymoon looks like.
A lot of the sequence of Brazil came out of some interaction that I had with Bill at the beginning of how to present that place. I grew up in Latin America, so Brazil was very close to me in that sense, culturally speaking.
Guillermo describes Brazilian culture as a place where there's a sense of magic, that magic exists in the world, and the fact that newlywed vampire and vampire-to-be couple would go there was something that he thought we could really start to explore and express through the landscape and through the people there.
Here we go. And music, please.
Vai, música!
And action!
The first day was actually Lapa. That's a scene where Bella and Edward get out of the car and walk through the streets. And that was really exciting because to kind of stage this party that took on a life of its own, basically.
I said to Bill, what if we actually found the place where these kids go? Where, like, if it was New York, we'd be in the East Village. We wouldn't be on the Upper East Side. If it was Paris, we would be in the 18th. We wouldn't be in the 2nd. So when these kids in Brazil actually see this movie, they're going to look and they go, ah, Lapa. They got it right. This is where we go.
Eu fiquei com medo porque eles não virem para cá filmar, né? Porque eles podem muito bem fazer um cenário em qualquer outro lugar.
País maravilhoso, com paisagens perfeitas.
Que nenhum filme nunca retratou isso antes. Nunca passaram essa realidade para lá. É bem diferente.
Muito apaixonada, apesar da idade, sou igual adolescente.
Todo jovem adolescente sonha em ter aquele vampiro que te faça perder o fôlego quando você o vê, que sinta aquelas pernas de bombas, o coração partindo, sabe, batendo mais acelerado.
Se você encontrasse com ele, o que você faria pra ele?
Não sei,
Se eu os visse, eu pediria um beijo de cada um no rosto.
Acho que eu não ia conseguir ficar em pé.
The outpouring of love of the fans in Brazil. It's unbelievable.
They were great. You know, I think they were very respectful. People would still be drinking and dancing between setups and obviously when the camera was off. And it was a really magical way to start the movie.
In case you don't know me, I'm Bill, one of the producers, and this is about synchronizing everybody on this company. There will be a lot of activity, especially starting Sunday afternoon at the marina.
We're trying to get in and out of the Marina Gloria as quick as we can. It's our intention to be rolling film as soon as it is dark.
A gente começa na Marina da Glória, no anoitecer, e a gente vai até o cair da noite.
Back round! Back.
So we're not staying in Rio?
No, just passing through.
Okay. Is it not all the way, or is it maybe it's not all the way in part? Yeah. Cut. Good. Forward.
I didn't really learn how to drive it. I went for a lesson and crashed the practice boat, and then I went to Brazil and crashed the Brazilian boat too.
Go forward again.
And then I drive a boat all right. I went to a lesson. Let it idle forward.
I am definitely not nautical. But it was really fun. After a couple of takes, I very much considered just leaving in it.
Okay. All right. Checking the gate, guys, and just make sure.
I'm gonna count you as on board, all right? So don't be out here filming our departure. You'll never make it to Parity.
Fast forward to the tropical island from Rio de Janeiro.
That was a 5-hour highway road trip.
Winding coast of Brazil, it's beautiful. You see a lot of countryside.
We went to this adorable little town called Parity.
Parity is sort of the colonial village that was the main town that you would leave from to then take a half-hour boat ride to get to Isle Esme.
The honeymoon is written as an island off the coast of Brazil.
This is described as being absolutely remote from any other island. Well, there are hundreds of islands off the coast of Brazil, but they're all kind of within spitting distance of each other. So finding a place that felt like it was remote enough, where there was a house on the beach, because they have laws against that there, can present challenges.
What was needed for the story and for the script doesn't exist in Brazil. Big, beautiful houses don't exist on the beach. There's the house, there's lawn, there's a wall, gates, and then there's sand. The beaches are all public over there. What we ended up finding was a house with a big lawn in the front, which we took the whole lawn and turned that into sand. And it's just astonishing.
Copy that.
Taking something that comes out of someone's imagination and then making it connect to reality, that was really fun. It felt very satisfying.
All right, here we go. Camera.
Mark beat.
Set.
And action!
I win.
The first couple of days we got there were amazing.
The weather was great. The water was like turquoise. It was beautiful. It was going to be perfect.
And then almost everything that could go wrong went wrong.
We showed up on the top of the day, and it was reasonably a normal day. We started at 8, 9 in the morning. The weather seemed somewhat consistent and where it was stable.
And roll sound.
You realize how many eggs you've gone through since you got here?
Yeah, my appetite's been crazy.
Mid-afternoon, the wind started to pick up.
We didn't have a forecast that was going to tell us that it was going to be this bad at all.
I'm starving.
You realize how many eggs you've had?
The weather started to turn for the worse at 6 in the evening. About 8:30 in the evening, Marine coordinator confirmed that it was starting to approach the point of no return and suggested that we wrap things up and get off the island. We immediately wrap it up and start heading down to the dock.
We were all going down to the docks, and it was pouring down rain, and everyone's covering up, and they were like, we can't bring the boats in, turn around, go back.
Now we should start a boat picnic. All right, so here we are in at the Casadino in Paraty, or Alta Costa Paraty. Take a look at everybody shacking around. And they're starting to clamor at my skirt. We're in a holding pattern based on a quoted 120 kilometer an hour winds and in the eye of the storm, or a tempesta as they call it.
This is a very unique situation. Day 3 of shooting. We usually expect this to be like being reined in Vancouver.
Hey, how we doing, everybody, please? Be careful with the props and the furniture, all right? Everybody just take care. This is all rental furniture. This is a hot set that we're going to be using for the next 2 days.
So if you're wet?
If you're wet, stay away from it.
We actually had to stay in the island. We were not able to return to land, to the hotel. It was like camping when you go out and then something goes wrong. It worked out really well. It brought in a very strong sense of group.
Maybe like at 1 in the morning, someone found a bottle of vodka, I think, and then watching that get shared by 80 people, that was a challenge.
I guess about 120 of us had to spend the night on our set in this house, you know, kind of laying down tarps and sleeping on the floor. And I slept in a bathtub, I think.
Yeah, well, we went to Rio in the rainy season because we do stuff like that.
Hurricane force winds and monsoon rains. It seems fairly typical of honeymoons, really. If you put a lot of emphasis on a vacation, it ends up being pretty abysmal.
Nothing if not traditional.
You see? Let's go again. Okay, we'll come.
We started the movie, we structured it such that we would start with really Rob and Kristen, and as much as, you know, maybe almost a month of shooting, just with them.
You want to take a look around?
Bill really wanted to just be able to kind of focus in on the early stages of their relationship.
It was a really good, comfortable way for all of us to get to know each other.
Sitting on that yesterday, it's true.
And I feel that with Rob, he's an incredibly charming guy.
We have to do that again. It's halfway through.
Edward can sometimes be brooding and filled with doubt, but when he finally makes this leap and marries Bella and gets what he wants, you know, I thought there was just like a kind of charm and ease and more of Rob Pattinson that he was willing to bring to the part.
Oh, God.
And that was the most valuable time that we had.
Okay, good. Thank you.
For those of you who haven't been there, the waterfall location is a hike. Even though locations have done a fine job in making the path safe, just be aware, it's a jungle. Security, Tulio. Let's have all your guys raise their hands. These are all Tulio.
¿Vas a cargar eso junto o separado?
No, separado.
The biggest challenge of all is when you go to a foreign country is you have to deal with language barriers.
There are ant piles. You could stand in one and suddenly you'll be dinner.
Cuidado com o caminho que vocês estiverem indo na trilha, tem animais, répteis, enfim, a gente está numa floresta.
All right, thank you very much. Let's go.
Obrigada, gente.
It was a very big hike, taking equipment up, and it was a big deal.
Here we go, man.
Everybody who goes up the hill carries something. The first location will be halfway up the trail.
Primeira locação é a metade do caminho da trilha.
The second location will be almost to the top, and then we finish at the waterfall.
It was a very beautiful place. It was one of those few places still left in the earth where things are pristine. The level of nature at its best, you know, jumping at you. It was really beautiful.
My name is Douglas Cantudo. I'm one of the stunts coordinators of Superação Stunts. Really glad to help the Twilight Saga. Today, Edward and Bella had a scene on a waterfall. They had to jump.
Naturally, this is too dangerous for them to do. So we've done basically three elements here, which is the stunt doubles at the top of the waterfall, which we will do a replacement with digital doubles. And then we did splash elements so that we could actually see them landing in the water. And in post, we'll use CG to marry the images together.
Today was a specific job that we had to do. We had to build a safe path for the crew, film from up there. On our crew today, we had 6 guys working as stunt riggers plus 2 divers. It was a big job, and I hope it's gonna be okay for the movie, gonna contribute.
All the rock was very slippery. It was actually, you know, people could fall at any moment.
We'd taken off as much moss as possible. Basically, it was just like everybody taking their turn, like going down, you know, which I did a couple of times.
Look at how beautiful that is.
You see them shaking?
I know.
It was pretty cool. The actors were great sports, just jumping in that day. And I know Kristen especially is not a big fan of the water. She was really a trooper.
Great.
Okay, pull them out. Okay, pull them out. Good?
Really good. Good. We'll print 2 and 3.
On a good gait, we're moving up the hill.
It is such a huge thing that these books and movies have been leading to for the first time, and it was like, wow, there are big things to figure out here. sex for the first time. So we came back here in Baton Rouge and then did the interiors of the honeymoon.
In a kind of, really small, protected setting.
And it was all about just keeping an environment that was comfortable for everybody, because they're not the only ones that are uncomfortable with it. It's also the people around it. Shooting a love scene is one of the most difficult things to do in movies, actually, because there's all this thing of the stereotype and what people expect.
And so it seemed to me that because it's so built on audience expectation, it would be fun to play with audience expectation.
Let's go for a take, please.
And action.
Those scenes were approached with a lot of honesty, and everything was very natural. And we capture very specific moments, and then the scene was built around that.
That's true. Okay, good. And to do it in sort of two parts, to shoot a sex scene that seems like, well, it was a pretty good sex scene. He wrecked the bed and all that. But there's just something inside that thinks, God, I wish I could have seen a little more.
And action.
And then to play the second part as her alone the next morning with the memory of still kind of just so overwhelmed by this new experience, kind of reliving it, and not reliving the heat of it, but just reliving those tender moments.
Things that people that are really engaged can feel and relate to.
With these two incredibly collaborative actors who knew how important the scene was and wanted to make it as honest and kind of expressive as it could be.
And action.
Sorry.
I thought there was just this great ease between them.
Really good.
And a sense of confidence that was really enjoyable. And I feel that just made all the difference, I think.
Welcome to day 76 of Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn, here in beautiful Euclid, I think is how you pronounce the name.
It's almost kind of like halfway through the second half of Breaking Dawn. We got another 25 days, another 5 weeks of shooting, but getting ready for the first shot. The little tide's coming in.
We shot at the same beach in Tofino that the other movies had shot at and got really lucky. It was a tough scene to do in a short time, but I remember that as really being one of our more blessed days.
It's been awesome working with the pack throughout this whole experience.
Me and the rest of the Wolfpack guys are all really, really tight-knit, close friends, so it's super exciting having everybody back.
It's like a family reunion.
It's a good place to be with brothers. And sisters. With your brothers.
They are so silly and goofy, and they're awesome.
I get to hang out with the guys, which is always a pleasure.
Let's see, we got the boys over here.
Play a little footy ball. That's how we roll.
I asked Bill Condon if we're gonna be doing crazy flips and kicking it, like with CG special effects stuff. And he's like, no, they're not gonna be any super soccer.
Whenever the Wolfpack's on set, it gets a little crazier.
We're gonna go, shirtless in this one. I wonder how cold it's gonna be right beside the beach with all the wind blowing on us.
Here we go again!
The only thing meaningful here really is Taylor, Julia, and the kids looking toward him,
B-Mark.
562 Nice sunny day, nice sunny day, nice sunny day.
And action!
Maybe they'll say she was in a car crash. Or tripped and fell off a cliff.
Maybe being any kind of happy is better than being miserable about someone you can't have.
Good! Tails right!
It's a lovely day. The sun is out. No rain at all. It's not cold.
It's still raining. The Wolfpack seems to bring out the best in the weather conditions. I mean, hail, snow, really crazy rain, pouring fake rain over real rain.
There's a lot of wind going on right now. A lot of cuddling, a lot of hand warmers, a lot of shivering, a lot of goosebumps.
We had like this little heater on the side. It kind of kept us a little bit warm, and we had these huge parkas on.
I learned my lesson last time, and I've got like 6 layers on under my wardrobe. And that's helping. Unlike Boo Boo, who is shirtless today.
Underneath our tank tops, we'll have shirts on. Like, they cut them so you can't see the edges of the shirt. Then even under my shorts, I'm wearing these like really thick, like tight shorts that keep me really warm. It's still pretty cold outside though, but I'm glad I have them on.
Going back and forth from being very hot to very cold, it's probably, you know, we were like popping like vitamin C's like you wouldn't believe.
It was tough, you know. Again, I was kind of in awe of like what good sports all these actors were.
We have a tsunami advisory in effect here. It hit Tokyo. We don't know what hit Hawaii yet. So we're trying to get the rest of the crew out of Dodge right now. Going to wait it out on high ground.
Having survived whatever that storm was in Brazil, then we go to this great hotel in Tofino and get the call at 5 o'clock in the morning that we have to evacuate because the tsunami is going to hit the other coast.
The alleged wave that is heading this direction is due to whatever it may be, whether it's 2 inches or 20 feet, is due to hit within the next 15 minutes.
There's been warnings all over the other countries, Australia, Malaysia. We had a warning here, so we're delayed. But I think we'll be fine. I think we'll be all right.
We were evacuated from our hotel at like 6 a.m. and everybody was just sort of hanging around not knowing what was going to happen.
It's one of those memorable things where we're all waiting for this thing that obviously, very fortunately, never happened. People got less sleep was all.
All right, folks, that's a wrap here on the island.
The wolves have changed a bit from movie to movie. When we went into the first one, there wasn't very much time, so it was like version 1. And then as we got to move into Eclipse and then finally into the Breaking Dawn movies, we actually got to really refine the way that they looked in ways that we don't get to do with a character normally.
It's a real balance between look and technology, and because we've been working on this franchise for such a protracted period of time, we're able to improve, you know, the look from show to show.
In this case, our directors were changing each time. Our visual effects supervisors were changing each time.
Chris Weitsky was very interested in sort of these anthropomorphic wolves, you know, and I think David Slade had a greater interest in wolves that weren't as human.
They started a new moon with sort of being timber wolf based and appropriately ragged, you know, because they've been traipsing through the forest and stuff like that. So we wanted to make sure they look a little bit matted. And on the third movie, on Eclipse, the director really wanted them to be a lot more cleaned up, a lot more groomed. And then on this one, Bill and, you know, everybody sort of wanted to go back to the sort of ragged looking wolves.
We put a real focus on the reality of what it's like for these creatures to be going through this muddy forest all the time and making sure that they had a grit to them and a sense of being lived in.
I think this was the first time we put mud on their paws, you know, so they got a little bit more muddy when they roll around the ground, furs flying all over the place, and they want to have this sort of lived-in look.
I kind of based it on what a scene demanded because these scenes have so much emotional content, you know. It did feel like we didn't want to be constricted to just a realistic view of wolves, but you wanted to be constantly aware of their animal nature.
There were two major sequences on this show. One was the wolves in the lumberyard, kind of chatting up and being wolf-like, and the other was the big fight with Cullens. So Phil sort of led the charge with the wolves in the lumberyard, and I took on the big fight at the end.
The lumberyard was tricky in that it was a very different kind of a scene. You know, for most of these things, there's a great deal of action, and what the wolves are doing in the lumberyard scene is mostly having a dialogue.
We have real enemies to fight tonight. Tonight?
When Bill presented the script to us, he said, well, I've kind of got a problem here because I've got a scene with a bunch of talking wolves, and I don't want an animated movie to break out in the middle of my film.
I mean, we have a 3-minute scene with no human figures, with no actors. You really had to be able to tell who everybody was, you know, and that became another challenge of making sure that you understand who each one was when you're focusing on them.
In the books, they talk with telepathy. So how are we gonna create a scene of the wolves interacting with each other, yet they have dialogue, but they don't have lip sync? How are we gonna tell who's talking?
And as they got deeper and deeper into it, Bill and Jenny realized that they could just jettison like half the dialogue in the scene. You know, really played a lot better.
We have to protect the tribe.
We had a basic idea of what the blocking would be. So we went out and we storyboarded it ourselves.
My job is to take the script and translate it into something visual, basically a guideline for the people on set to be able to know, oh, we're shooting this shot, now we're shooting this shot, this is a medium, this is a close-up, this is a wide shot.
Will is the first line of interpretation on the script, so, you know, it's just a bunch of words. He'll go through a whole sequence and make 40, 50 drawings, and then I'll grab those and start to time them out. And the minute I see, this doesn't seem like it would cut here, or maybe this would go here, I start to flop shots, put camera moves on them, and we work together to kind of get the storyboards to tell our interpretation of the script.
And then we'll look at it all like a poorly animated film with a lot of long holds, but it gives us an idea of the timing and the pacing and the shot count and whatnot.
And then after seeing the storyboards, they found a location and they took extensive photographs and did a survey there. So then they brought that back and then we started doing previs. So based on the boards, based on the actual location, we started to shape the scene.
Pre-visualization, which is very low resolution CG animation, and you can take still photographs and video and you can kind of incorporate all this stuff together. And with dialogue and music, you pretty much know what's going on. That's quite helpful today, especially with a tight deadline.
The schedule was like really, really tight, so we had to plan everything, you know, super well, so we could just get in and get out. It was mostly the logistics of planning. Shooting all went, you know, pretty well.
Working with Phil Tippett, who is going to go up and supervise the shoot for those shots, was really fantastic because not only were we be able to get the animation that was going to be shot, we could actually have exact camera measurements, we could know exactly how big the set needed to be, so we solved a lot of production problems up front.
Because we boarded it, because we did the previs, we knew exactly all of the setups, all of the angles. Phil and EJ just pounded through that stuff really fast.
They shot all the plates for the lumberyard sequence in 2 days, something amazing number of setups because we'd been able to previs.
We got it back here, and then we were able to assemble the scene really quickly. And then Bill actually recorded the actors doing all the dialogue, started laying it in.
We're ready. No time to waste. Now? Before it's born?
Since then, he's brought the actors back again, had them do some more performances, which have then affected the way that some of our animation has played. So we've gone back and revisited that. It's been a really fun process.
We're outnumbered.
By a lot.
I won't let them hurt my family. The whole third act here is based on the idea that the wolves are going to surround the house, and it sort of becomes a siege movie. They're going to basically wait out the Cullens, who are already starting to feel hungry. They haven't hunted for a while, and these guys are just going to make it impossible for them to leave, and if anyone tries to, they'll be killed. And it's not only an action scene, but it's an action scene where one half of the battle is just imaginary, you know? So that was as much a learning experience as anything else for me, and it was great to have as a partner in that E.J. Forster, who had done the second unit work and stunt work on the previous movie.
Roll cameras, please. And stunts.
3, 2, 1, go!
And cut. Okay, very nice. My name is E.J. Forster. I'm the second unit director on Breaking Dawn 1 and 2. So you can see behind us, we're here at the Cullen house. We're now shooting the Cullens defending the house. Cut. Oh, right at the same time. Perfect.
We were lucky to have, you know, E.J. Forster back as second unit director, because we have a really good line of, you know, telepathic communication. And the key to the whole thing was planning in the choreography and just doing iterations and iterations and iterations.
Don't we have Emmett back here fighting a wolf?
He'll be over there, yeah.
Yeah, Emmett's in here with a wolf too. I need another wolf. And it's like this.
It was really the first time that the wolves have played a major part in a battle. You got the Cullens and you got the wolves, and I won't say good guys and bad guys because they're both sort of good guys fighting each other. So it's a major story point. The wolves are really, you know, they're characters. They're not just background animals.
The siege is just a melee. I mean, it's really kind of chaotic. We actually took, chess pieces and figured out, okay, well, how many wolves are coming from any one direction? And that was, for us, again, it was another opportunity to do something fun.
The secret to do visual effects properly is that things have to be well thought out. The visual effect has to belong naturally and completely behave and belong in the frame as if it was there. In order to get that, you have to know exactly what's going to happen and what interactivity is going to take place. You cannot just wing it and fix that later.
And so we were laying out the scene and trying to help everybody, the director and all the stunt guys, see it. And then meanwhile, the stunt guys are looking at the boards, they're looking at our animatics, and they're actually shooting video footage of themselves doing the stunts.
The whole choreography of the fight was very much more complicated because there were so many moving parts of eye lines, and it's just like a huge can of worms, a bunch of wolves running in and running out, and people over here, and where does this person go? And we really laid everything out, very carefully with extensive previs. The actors for the siege felt, kind of silly because in some instances, they would just, be pantomiming to air.
To simulate the wolves coming up at us, these wolves aren't exactly the wolves that you'll see in the finished product of the film. These wolves are stuffed beanbags. That's right, we wrestle beanbags. And then the amazing magicians over at the CGI Tech, they turn those beanbags into hairy, ferocious wolves. So I guess the hardest part about shooting these scenes is not laughing the entire time. Because you're like, oh, it's a beanbag, oh, I'm so scared. Oh. So, that's the real acting right there, where you're like, hey, no, very, very serious, very serious. You're like, hey, it's a beanbag. No, it's a scary wolf.
This is the famous Cullens versus the Wolves. The wolves are here to do some damage to Belle and the baby. The sequence was designed by Eric Levin and Phil Tippett, and I'm helping him. We're going to do a little reference right here.
Ready, and action.
Kidding. On camera.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah. Okay, let's go right away.
It took a long time to shoot, but ultimately, I think that it came together really well. It's I think, the most satisfying wolf action sequence that we've had in the movies yet.
Creatively, the story demanded that her body deteriorate as it tries to adjust to this living creature within her. Here's a person who's only 110 pounds and she's going to drop down to 70 pounds by the delivery of birth. How do you achieve that? Physically, you can't do that. You have to do that through the support of visual effects and prosthetic appliances and special makeup and lighting and camera moves. And when you marry all these elements together, it enables us to achieve what the demands of the script are.
I can't think of another movie that's done this yet. To take a huge, maybe, half of a movie, take your lead character, played by Kristen Stewart, well established in this part, and every single shot is a special effect. It's been done with virtual characters, but this is a completely realistic central character who you are just meant to accept as someone who's getting thinner and thinner and thinner. So it was a real challenge because the whole idea was to feel viscerally the price that this woman is paying.
We storyboarded all these scenes, and then I started thinking of all these different techniques, and to have people wearing helmets and doing motion capture faces, and this would slow production down an incredible amount. The budget would go through the roof, and it's like, it's got to be a simpler way.
Lola specializes in digital cosmetics. We say we're digital cosmetic surgeons. We make, eye bags go away. If a star is, working till 3 in the morning, we make them look, fresh and lively.
They work with a Beverly Hills plastic surgeon who describes how people age, or one makes them young, one makes them older, and how you would tighten things, where you press and where you push in.
We came in the process fairly early on this. They felt our approach was probably the best for this movie.
Edson Williams came up with this technique of making people look younger. That was hand done. It wasn't a computer program. It was just sort of the art of visual effects. That technique was used in Benjamin Button and recently Social Network. So Edson said, no, we just need 2 cameras, just give me a 45-degree angle view of their face and we could figure out a way to do this.
The real trick to making her look, thin is seeing the actual structure of her skull underneath her face. And we've actually developed a whole new technique just specifically to accomplish that. We call it shrink wrap. It actually has to do with taking the scan of the original Kristen Stewart. We could then shrink wrap the texture onto the amazing one. I wouldn't say it's groundbreaking, but it was a clever technique, and it's really allowing us to get through these shots. We took the striking, emaciated 3D head, we tracked it into the scene, and then we literally took the original photography and we shrank it onto the puppet. We're doing about 300 shots, just under 300 shots. And you can make anyone look great on one shot, but to make them look consistent across the whole scene is really a big challenge. This shrink wrap technique is really allowing us to keep a consistent look.
It's almost like painting, but a computer will track that shape once it's done to help you along. But it's a lot of hand manipulation. It's still the artist gets in there and does it by hand.
A lot of the artists we have here, we brought in with no compositing experience. We have a lot of guys from film school, and we have a lot of guys with photography backgrounds. And we have several of our best artists were traditional artists doing anatomy. So they were very well versed in the proportions of the human body because they went to school as almost like medical illustrators.
I'm sorry, you guys. It'll be way better if we just give me a minute and we just go from the start.
Here we go. You're coming home soon, right?
Okay, Dad, I don't want you to freak out. But I'm going to a medical center in Switzerland.
Kristen there's a lot for her to do as an actress, and we wanted to keep all her emotion. We wanted to keep the way her eyes look, the way her lip quiver. We wanted to retain all that. The other techniques previously would have been to make a 3D face and try to animate that. It's like we're not animating anything. We're just following and we're thinning.
Well, I've always been an advocate of integrating practical effects and then being enhanced with visual effects. It not only helps her performance, but also helps to address it visually.
I'd never worked with prosthetics before. It's crazy, you walk by a monitor and you're like, wow, that's not me. People would be like, oh my goodness. And I'd be like, no, I don't just look that bad right now. I mean, obviously I've got, yeah. So they did a great job. They looked very real.
We've got a great prosthetics company, which is actually doing, chest pieces and cheekbones.
Did something sort of strange to the bridge of my nose and my chin. They plan on digitally reducing that.
So it's a combination of old school Hollywood prosthetics and new school digital help.
Once we see her like this, it starts this process of disintegration, of her becoming weaker and thinner. And Kirsten's she's very thin on her own, but this is an emaciation thing.
We had phase 1, 2, and 3. Stage 1, we see dark under her eyes and she gets thinner.
In the second stage, these bones protrude more. These bones start to protrude. Obviously, then it gets more extreme.
Phase 3, she weighed 65 pounds.
It's definitely very strange considering we did most of the movie where she gets looking progressively worse and worse and worse. It was actually quite moving to see her look as haggard and destroyed as she did.
I'm not gonna lie. You're hideous.
The initial direction we're given for the emaciation of Bella was fairly extreme. It was pretty gaunt, her eyes were deep, and we got pretty close to it. We achieved it, and then they started dropping the shots, and the reaction was like, ah! And based on the, holy cow, she looks really bad. So they said, give her a few cheeseburgers and bring the shots back to us.
Original, latest. Original, latest.
Boy, it's really subtle. When it works, you've got it right. It's really all the time this fine edge. All the notes are the same. It's just most of a artistic guy saying, you know what, I know this is correct, but she still looks her face looks wide.
Yeah. The trickiest scene is where we move past her back onto Bella's face. This is a point where she really is literally skin and bones.
So on the face, we used the shrink wrap technique. For the whole body shot, we ended up using a full CG body. And then you attach the skin to it. So then you can make this 3D model move around. So it's a much more complex than the facial shrink wrap thing that we did. But it's really the only way to do a full body. There's no shrink wrap trick for the full body.
When I saw this in the first screening, everybody was just dead silence. And I wasn't sure, like, oh my God, they hate it. It said it freaked everybody out. That's the moment. It's like, okay, you really get it. You realize she's dying.
Okay, we're gonna look at it, Kristen.
You're set. You just gonna grab it by case.
They created this doll. It's this thing, I don't know what to call it, that looks just like Kristen, minus 50 pounds.
It made it a lot easier to be concerned. We had to look at this puppet and it was just awful and really emaciated and it's kind of creepy.
The description in the book of sort of when she stands and drops the blood and her back breaks in an unnatural way and her legs splay out, well, that's just something you can't accomplish with an actress.
Hi, welcome to the Legacy Effects trailer. We've created this likeness of Bella in her emaciated state. So to make a piece like this, it was involved in several steps. The team of guys did a traditional life cast on her, which provides the subtle, skin texture, but we also had her scanned digitally. So we had her from head to toe scanned. Then in the computer, we took her scan and we manipulated that into getting this emaciated look. Fingers can be positioned, and it's pretty lifelike. You get all the bone rotations, legs as well. It's as lifelike as you can possibly make it.
Really nice, great job. It was incredible when the Bella doll finally appeared on the set. She was sort of like hanging at the corner of the soundstage.
When we showed her the puppet, we had some very funny moments when she looked at herself.
I've always wanted to hang out with myself.
And she started punching it.
I really do feel so inclined to like
hit her. Why?
Slap her. I don't know, like, 'cause she's all upset. Snap out of it. Snap out of it.
They did a fantastic job. It felt so much like her, and yet like this other version, this horribly sick version of her. I was surprised Kristen wasn't more freaked out by it.
So it's 3, 2, 1, action.
Drop, yeah. 3, 2, 1, drop.
Ooh, I should have
That
pulled.
worked.
Yeah, I felt like I was late.
I mean, I was looking at a person for like 3 seconds.
Here we go.
I think just like taking it in first at this moment.
And I'm standing like an idiot like this.
But slow-mo, it'll be fantastic.
Yeah, but no, you don't understand. I stand like this sometimes. This is not the first time this has happened.
Everybody set? Roll camera.
Speed and set.
3, 2, 1, go.
Generally, when I've worked with dummies before, they're not at all human-like. But this one looks just like Kristen and is smushy and feels like a human.
It's all like upsetting, a little upsetting.
Go!
It's really disturbing seeing her like fall in really unnatural positions. It's gonna look fantastic.
What is that? It's my venom.
It's really wild, you know, in the book as described. There are these beats along the way of that baby biting its way out and Edward helping. The challenge is to shoot that or to capture that in a PG movie.
Say hi.
In the book, it's described so much more gruesome. She's been drinking blood to sustain herself and the baby, and so she's literally like choking on that, and she can't really breathe. She's throwing it up.
In the book, it says Bella spews up a fountain of blood. I mean, it's all this stuff's like, well, we're not doing that.
Is that as big? I guess that's the incision. In
Well, you know, because we can do whatever we want
I
to
mean,
do.
not
No.
if she's cut open. I would think more blood might be on that.
That's been a real well thought out process for Bill Condon and the rest of us to figure out how to capture the texture from the book without kind of crossing over into something that may be too grotesque for audience, because the descriptions of the book are pretty, you know, incredible.
Very early on, I decided the minute we get down there on that bed until that baby is born, we're not going to see anything beyond what Bella could see. It's all like what she can see looking that way or looking up.
It's very kind of, you know, ER-like, you know, you're kind of, you know, rushing about as things are happening.
It's a sequence that really is devastating, and it really engages you, and it puts you there, and you suffer. You're with her completely.
And what that allowed us to do is Rob will disappear out of frame, and we'll hear something, and he'll come back, and he's bloody, and something's happened. And if you've read the book, you know what's happened, and if you haven't, you wonder what's happened. And I think that's exactly how it should have been. I think it needed to be just impressions as morphine begins to spread through your system of what that experience would have been like. There was a full life-size version of Bella, so that, for example, when Edward is giving her CPR, he's able to really do it, something that would have cracked Kristen's bones if he'd been able to do it that strongly, you know, in real life.
In fact, most of the people end up black and blue. And I said, the only way we can do that is we have a puppet up to Kristen's neck that you can beat on her chest beyond what you actually could do, because you would actually harm somebody.
What would happen with those harms?
The trick about this is, unless we use the full body puppet, this straps on to Kristen, and then there's a full body puppet.
It was a complicated and fun process of figuring out when we were going to use the model, when we were going to use Kristen. Sometimes it's a combination of both. When Kristen's lying there, it's the legs of the dummy.
Are they going to be like, because I know the spine's broken, are they going to be like out? Or are they going to be just splayed down, like?
Leg position, splayed down.
Oh. Oh.
We built a table and cut it apart so that it's actually her head, shoulders.
Getting locked into the birthing unit was really sort of intense.
She's really been a great sport about it. We keep telling her all these things that are going to happen. She's going to have to be pinned under a table, and she's up for it.
Looking down at you know, really flimsy legs is strange.
What's this shot right now?
Too much. This shot is going to be everybody.
Right. Yes, Peter?
The birth is terrifying. And I think we all knew that it was going to be really scary.
Rose, don't.
It's so intense, and the camera's kind of jerking from one person to the next, and it's hard to figure out the balance of just, you don't want to be over the top, but at the same time, I mean, if something like this was really happening, it would be extremely dramatic. Carlisle's coming as fast as he can, but although it was very difficult and we were all a little intimidated to film the scene, it was a good thing because it gets us, you know, it kind of shakes it up a little bit.
As soon as Bella goes into labor, the movie becomes crazy. It's like fast-paced, everybody's freaking out. There's so many things to do and so little time to do it.
Rosalie, wait until the morphine spreads.
Kind of turns from, I think, a fairy tale to chaos.
As Mike steps in, we'll come up.
Carlisle says the placenta must have detached, which was, you know, when we went to Alice for the first time. Okay, so, right, we'll find that stuff, right?
Well, the next line is Alice, Carlisle.
This is where, like, can the switch happen?
To Edward. Then do I go down and try to get the scalpel pickup?
That's right. And you try to carry that to
the grab.
To the grab. Up to Edward, let the morphine.
It would be nice to get a little movement like that, or at least see the toes moving.
If you go up at all, which I don't think we need to.
Sometimes it was hard to, you know, keep a straight face.
Jacob, take the baby.
Keep that away from me.
Hey there. Watch it.
Watch yourself. There was one point when she stops breathing and she's out of it and I have to give her CPR. There were some moments during that we couldn't keep straight faces because she's just like dead. Her lips are closed and all of a sudden I gotta wrap my whole mouth around her lips and give her CPR. And it was, it ended up working, but it was funny at moments.
Rosalie, pass some morphine.
No, it's too soon. Carlisle said the placenta must have detached.
She, again, was a great sport. She's totally into all this, you know. She's like, you know, she should become like Schwarzenegger or something. She's a total like action star in the making. She gets into the whole challenge of special effects.
Kristen has attacked the final 2 films with relish. With the pregnancy, she's really kind of dived into her research and allowed herself to kind of go to these places. It's been one of my favorite parts of being involved in these movies is just watching her work every day.
Pregnancy was rough because, you know, it's not the normal, it's really not a typical way that people have children. It's really violent. It almost kills her. She talks about it all the time, but she is literally willing to die for the things that she loves. It just felt so real. It felt oddly real, but it felt also like I was fighting for something, like so, like it's like to the death.
The intensity with which she played the pain was just astonishing to watch.
Oh my God, we just have to like do it like soon, now, like because I feel like I need to.
Everyone was marveling, like, how does she do that?
Come on, get him out! Get him out!
I still don't know quite how she pulled it off.
This is hard playing dead. I don't like this at all. Okay. I had bruises like all over the tops of my thighs. It really wasn't hard to imagine like what it would be like if that happened and if I had the feelings that she had, which I've, you know, been playing out for 3 years, like it really fits. It was like so perfectly drawn and satisfying.
I've been a big admirer of Kristen's based on the other movies and a couple of other things I'd seen her do. To be able to be her collaborator, partner, as she took this incredible journey across these 2 movies was, I think, maybe like #1 on the list of reasons to do the movie.
Yeah, that's good. Let's try this. Yeah. All right.
What I remember about that night is just sort of being like, I mean, looking around and seeing everyone there, like, you know, I mean, Nikki, Rob, it's like, you know, Ashley standing there, she can't, like, it just felt so real. The wedding and having Renesmee, those 2 moments, I feel like I could like burst into, now that they're done, I cannot even begin to tell you, I could like start hysterically laughing or crying right now thinking about it. Like it feels so good to be finished with that stuff.
Good.
You wanted to make this birthing scene completely realistic.
There ended up being blood and it was sticky and not a pretty situation.
There was chunks of who knows what everywhere, blood, umbilical cords. It was intense.
There was a lot of fake blood on set, definitely. We had the corpse, bride, dead body on set. So there's some horror there.
Most of the time we're either doing it with nothing or with a dummy. And so, like being covered in cream cheese and jelly and trying to perform a birthing. I ended up chewing through something. No one really knew what it was. I was chewing through whatever it was pretty gross, and it was made out of cream cheese.
We had our newborn baby. We've covered him in a mixture of, I think, strawberry or raspberry jelly and cream cheese to give it the right consistency. So it's all mixed together. So here you have this like, you know, gore-covered child screaming, of course. It's kind of like not working in the scene because he's just so frantic. And then on the second take, the baby got his hand in his mouth. And all of a sudden, just quiet. He's like, I am delicious. This is fantastic. I mean, first experience with sugar, probably a little early for that. But then the baby was fine. He's like, this is great. So he had this wonderful, wide-eyed, look at this beautiful world I've discovered thing going on. It was pretty cool.
There's no way you can't be moved by, you know, doing a thing with a almost newborn baby. I mean, I'd never done that before, and I thought it was great fun doing it.
Check that, please. I forgot.
He was able to get some really beautiful things with Edward in that moment.
Jacob, take the baby.
It really was able to touch like the human emotions of that scene.
Come on, Belle, please. Please, please, please.
Rob really nailed it. It was really powerful. I teared up. Several people near me did. It was just a lump in your throat.
Alice! Jasper!
That moment of thinking you've lost everything and just not being able to accept it. I mean, it was really emotional.
All right. All right, you gonna be all right. You gonna be all right.
Part of the death is, and it's really beautifully described in the book, she experiences the full agony of what it's like to transform from human to vampire. But it's all happening inside her body. So we just decided to go right in there. As described in the book, it's like flames going through your veins and you're screaming and nobody can hear it. So it's classic horror movie stuff. But again, told in a subjective way.
Her return to vampire health. It starts with Kristen as, here's where we're going. We do the camera move. Kristen then leaves, we put the puppet down, relight it, reset up the camera, and use that as a reference to bring her back.
We're almost doing a blend between the emaciated puppet and the normal Bella. It's a tough shot.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. That's a wrap in Baton Rouge.
It's been an intense experience for about a year and a half now. Jumping in with developing scripts, prepping 2 movies, shooting the 2 movies, and then a very tight schedule to get the first movie out and released. And the second movie, the exciting thing is that it's so unbelievably different. It is like making a completely new movie.
Check that out.
It's the same characters, a whole bunch of new ones, a huge amount of new vampires, but it just feels like a completely different animal. I went into the movie excited by the prospect of that experience, and I came out of it really thrilled by having had it.